Good evening, Haley.
Hi, you all right, Levy?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but I don't know what's happened. It's gone off. I think I've got a bit of a problem with Zoom at the moment. Can you hear me?
I can hear you well.
Can't see you at all now.
How about now?
No,
Start.
no.
I'm going to start my video. If it
Okay.
lets. I think it's my problem. It's a good thing you pointed that out because my video is not on.
Ah, okay. I thought, am I going mad? No, I'm not going completely mad. You all right, Levy?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but I can't see him. I can hear you. I can't see you at all. Anybody else see him?
Hold on. Let's try now.
You just give me 2 minutes, Levy. I'm just going to go out. I won't be a sec.
No problem at all.
I've still got no video. Has anybody got any video of him?
Oops, that's not good.
No. Shall I come out of it and I'll go back in again?
Probably a good idea. It should be on now.
Oh dear. Not working at all. Open Zoom meetings.
I can still hear you.
Keeps coming up live on YouTube and it's just bizarre. I've got the latest version of Zoom. I don't know. Can everybody else see him?
We've got phone callers in. I'm not sure if Jeff can see me.
Can't see you now. It just
Can't
says
see
live.
you, I'm just imagining you.
It says live on YouTube, and I've got this. I've got the banner. I've got the banner that says Judaism at home, and then
Are you on YouTube now?
on YouTube. I'm supposed to go into live on YouTube.
No, it is on YouTube if you want, but then you won't be able to communicate. It's just one-way communication
No,
there.
Levy, I'm just concerned that I can't get in and I can't see you at all.
Haley, do you mind just trying to leave the meeting and
I have
coming back?
done that. Okay, I've got to do it again.
Good evening, Steve.
Good evening.
Could you see the screen?
Yeah.
Can't hear you though.
Can't hear me though.
No,
Yes,
I'm
I can hear.
I'm joking.
Okay.
Right, I'm coming out.
Brilliant.
Hello, everybody. It's
Hello,
Sylvia.
welcome aboard. Welcome, Sylvia. Come on
Hi.
in.
Fine,
Okay.
thank you, and yourselves?
Yeah, we're staying warm when we can.
All good.
Oh, goodness. Lots to be grateful for. Baruch Hashem.
Yeah.
Mrs. Abrams on board. Jeff's here.
Here, ready, waiting, and I've even got this on the laptop because my husband put it on for me. Because
Oh,
if it was me, I'd have it on in trip. You know, I'm like, yeah.
I was thinking I should have dropped off a printed version. We're not going to need it especially because most of the
Oh,
text that we're
okay.
going to be using will be on the screen here. But if you've got a phone, then
Oh.
yes, you will need. I do apologize. But really, the idea was that if you ever want to look back at it, then we'd have what to look back at going forward. Yeah, but we're going to go through it
that's
nice and
okay.
slowly. We're not rushing. We're not rushing.
Fine. Okay.
Brilliant.
Whatever you say.
An easy customer. Keeping it nice and simple.
No, my husband's been waiting for me to say that for
lovely.
52 years, but still waiting.
Can you
Haley,
see
can
me
you see
now?
us?
Yeah. Okay.
Baruch
Here I am.
Hashem.
Hang on. There I am. No.
Almost.
Okay.
There you go. Welcome. Oh,
Yeah.
Northern Lights. We're doing well.
Well, I never saw them when I got there, so you know I might as well have them in the background now.
Everyone else will see them. Fantastic. Okay, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to get started. And if anyone else wants to jump on as we go along, that's absolutely fine. The way I'm working it today, I'm going to ask everyone, if it's okay, two things. Number one is that I'm going to put on mute the whole way through, so it's easier for the recordings and also easier for, in case anyone wants to ask, doesn't disturb. If you want to unmute yourself at any time, if you're on the phone, please do so by pushing *6. And if you're on the computer, it'd be much easier if you could type a chat. So if you type a comment, when it comes to a break in between sections, we'll have a look if there's any chats, any questions, and we'll go with it that way. It just means we can go a little smoother in that way. So we're going to say a warm welcome to everybody. They were on YouTube, Baruch Hashem, and also, of course, some recordings. Now that we're on YouTube, it's easy. So if you're watching this later on, welcome aboard and welcome to this journey. Today, we are starting a new course. It's a 5-part series, and the 5-part series is put together particularly and specifically for now. Now, I say now as in the lockdown. I know there are other countries that are slowly breaking out of the lockdown, and we are coming a little slower. But at the current stage as we are, lockdown is still in effect. It's fully legal to be in lockdown. It's the right thing to do. And Judaism at home has therefore obviously never been as important as it is now. But as we're going to say, we're going to be going through some of the very basic ideas in Yiddishkeit, starting from the very beginning, the Code of Jewish Law, which will be basic for some of us. And I'm sure that there'll be areas that all of us know, but I'm also quite confident that there'll be areas that will be new for everybody. Not all the same things, but everyone's going to find something to walk away with. And as I was preparing this, I myself enjoyed revising and also uncovering new areas that I haven't focused on in the past. We're going to go through quite a bit of information. I should say quite a lot of information. And there's going to be a lot of ideas that perhaps we're not ready to start doing yet. That's not a reason not to learn, because studying in itself is a mitzvah. And therefore, even if we're not ready to start doing it, but studying about it is also a good thing. So we're going to be learning what's out there. And in the right time, we'll take on more and more step by step, because the idea is to constantly be growing. And in order to grow, we've got to know where we can go. So that's the introductions for the beginning. But we are talking about Judaism, about Yiddishkeit, and therefore I want to start off with a little story. Chaim Yankel, who finally won the lottery after years and years of buying the ticket every week, week in, week out. So when he finally makes it big, decides right then and there, him and his wife, they buy an enormous house out in one of the big, beautiful places to live. And they get a full-time butler, and they make all plans, and they invite over their lifelong friends. The Cohens are coming over for lunch. And after they tell everybody, all the staff at home, what has to be done and to set up and this, that, and the other, they leave to go on a trip. They're living it up. When they come back 10, 15 minutes before the party is supposed to begin, they see that the butler's very kindly done everything they've asked him to do. But instead of setting up a table for 4, he set the table for 8. So they say to the butler, "What's with the table for 8?" So, don't worry, the Cohens called. And they called to say that they're bringing with the knishes and the blintzes. So we've set for the blintzes and the knishes also. They know about kosher food. Baruch Hashem, all of us know that our homes are more kosher or more Jewish just in the fact that we have Jewish food in it. Jewish menus, Jewish cuisine is cultural, it's good, it's great. It's part of what makes us Judaism interesting. But there's a lot more to our home Judaism than just the fact that we eat Jewish food there. What we want to explore is this particular idea where Judaism thrives at home. Now, truth be told, there are many, many areas in Jewish life at home. There's many, many areas in Jewish life in general. But when it comes to a search for where to start growing, one of the classic indicators that we're taught is to look around and see what circumstances are pushing us towards. So whatever circumstances we find ourselves in, obviously we have to deal with them, but they also become an indicator of where would be an appropriate area in life to grow in. So if circumstances today have almost forced us back into our homes a lot, then strengthening and growing in our Judaism at home is an easy one. It's a no-brainer. It's clear that today, at this time that we are, we're already going into weeks and weeks, months already, that we're at home, and strengthening our growth at home is clearly the direction where it's appropriate to invest growth. Now, the truth is, nobody really knows when lockdown will fully be lifted. We don't even know how long we're going to be here. We've just heard an announcement that places of worship are going to be opened for individual prayers, for individual service. Now, in Judaism, individual service doesn't take place in a place of worship. It doesn't take home. And therefore, this announcement doesn't mean much for Jewish worshippers. But the reason why it doesn't mean much is because individual worship in Jewish faith does happen. It happens all the time. It takes place at home. And to us, and from a Jewish perspective, home is the nerve center of our Yiddishkeit. Judaism thrives and starts at home. Unlike perhaps maybe different ways of life and different teachings, Judaism teaches that the nerve center of our Yiddishkeit is our home. It starts back from way back in the beginning, even before temple times. Put a little slide on the screen to keep it interesting. And the letter, the famous dream that Yaakov Avinu has. He's on his journey away from his parents' house. Effectively, the first move he makes to create his own home. And yet, he goes to sleep. He places his head on a rock. And when he wakes up after sleeping in the first time as an independent individual, he announces that this rock will be the cornerstone of the future temple. And we're told historically that that was exactly the place where hundreds of years later became the place for our holy temple, the Beis HaMikdash. Where was it built on? What was the bedrock, literally, of the Beis HaMikdash? A place where Yaakov, Jacob, our forefather, called home, went to sleep. The place where he lived became the holiness, which eventually could turn into a Beis HaMikdash. Home is very important. There's also a beautiful Talmud, a quote in the Gemara, in Maseches Menachos, Tractate Menachos, where there the Talmud talks about the home of a person. There's many quotes, but this particular quote connects and points out a similarity between the table that a person has in their own house, over which we have meals together as a family, over which we eat in order to live, and the shulchan, which means the table, says the Talmud, is similar to the altar inside the Holy Temple. All sorts of interesting connections, especially that just like the altar atones for a person's personal life, person's table also atones for their personal life. Funnily enough, I heard a class not long ago when someone was describing the concept of having a table over which family members can eat around. How many families in today's current climate are eating on a couch or at a bar stand or a bar table where they're not around the table, but they're eating and it's them and the food. And right next to them is another person and their food. But the idea of using a meal to have the whole family sit around so that you see each other and we're eating, and the eating becomes almost a ceremony where we're doing something together, is a very Jewish concept. And already from the beginning of time, it'd be in a Jewish value to have a table in which we sit around. Tables is a value that we appreciate. A table of food is a part of what makes a home into a home. So we're going to look at areas of home that we can grow in, that we can thrive in, so that, please God, in a few years from now, when we look back and we remember COVID-19 and the corona of 2020 and the lockdown, we're not just going to remember the funny times and the uncomfortable times, but we should be able to look back and see that actually there was tremendous personal growth. Tremendous, not because it was massive change, but because it used the opportunity of even a lockdown to help us grow. So we're going to start off with making it a good morning. How do we make it a good morning? What is a Jewish good morning? So we're going to cover today the rituals of a fresh start, making a morning into a morning. And then, please God, Be'ez Hashem, next week and the week after, the next 4 lessons after today, we'll cover eating, we'll cover meals, and then we'll cover, of course, prayers, which can be done at home and which can't be done at home, and how it works. And then we'll go on to Shabbos, which is a day of rest, which also takes place at home, and we'll spread it out over the next 4 or 5 weeks so that we walk away with obviously interesting ideas, but also very helpful areas in which we can push to grow. And as we started off saying, it's not that we're learning things that we have to start doing right away, but we're learning what's out there. And I'm encouraging everybody to take on board everything that we say, and then think back and say to ourselves, what area can I put into practice as we go forward? Okay, so we start off with the mornings. We start off with the start of the day, and that's for a good reason, because the way we set the day, the way we set the tone is how the day's going to follow. Almost like if you get onto the train that's on the right track, it's going to take you down the track that you want to go to. If you get onto a train that's on the wrong track, then all day we'll be traveling the wrong direction. So starting our day as a good morning is really important. Not only is it important because it's helpful for the day, but the way we wake up and start our day tends to demonstrate and to reveal our philosophy of life, how we view life. Unbelievable idea. The very first opening instruction in the book of Jewish law, the Code of Jewish Law, the Shulchan Aruch, talks about how to wake up. What's the correct way to make a morning into a good morning? And the answer is, you should rise like a lion. And instead of the morning awaking you, you should awake the morning. We're going to talk about how it works. We're going to talk about how it means to wake up the morning instead of being woken up by the morning. Starting off with the idea that if you imagine the day that you had an exciting opportunity coming your way, perhaps you were traveling on holiday, perhaps you were going to meet a long lost friend or family member, or perhaps it was the day that, I don't know, whatever it could have been, something was really exciting. And that day, what were the chances you pushed the snooze button more than once, or even once? We don't. When we have something really exciting to wake up for, we're not snoozing, because we are on a mission, going our way, and it's not just dragging. That's waking up in the morning. Not that the morning woke us up because we had nothing else to do. We couldn't sleep anymore, so we had no other choice. We had to get out of bed. We wake up the morning. We're on a mission. And that's a life philosophy that Judaism encourages us to take. We weren't born by mistake. Nothing about life is random. And waking up is an expression of, I have something to contribute today. And today is a gift. And therefore I'm getting out of bed because I'm not going to sleep by today's gift. I was up yesterday, and please God, I'll be up tomorrow, but today's now. And the excitement of the now, the gift of today, that's a life philosophy. And the way we wake up will demonstrate that. So we need to talk about how to get rid of snooze and how to celebrate today, and what we can do, what steps we can take to make sure that our day starts off with a good morning. And as we said, if it starts in a good morning, then it goes and continues elsewhere. There are many jokes about starting off a good morning. Unfortunately for me, I'm a coffee drinker and almost dependent on. It's almost an addiction that you got. Without a coffee, it's hard. It's hard without a coffee. So is the right way to make a morning into a good morning by having coffee? The answer can't be yes. Maybe it helps, but we're looking for more real answers. We're going to start off with what Judaism teaches us to do, the very first thing in the morning. Some of us know this. Some of us have heard of this. Some of us may not have heard of it. And the answer is the opening statement we make in the morning, the opening words that we say. So first of all, Moida Ani. When is it said? We're going to be practical here, technical, and then we're going to go on from there. When is it said? It said immediately upon awaking. So I open up my eyes. I realize that I'm awake. I don't push the snooze button. Instead of doing that, I right away do this. Right away upon awaking, I do Moida Ani. What's Moida Ani? Where do I do it? I do it while I'm still in bed. Still in bed, I'm lying down, and I realize that I'm awake. And right now, right here, what am I going to do? I'm going to do the Moida Ani prayer. What's Moida Ani prayer? So Moida Ani really is actually a quote. It's a text. We're going to put it on the screen right now. I'm going to read through the Moida Ani in the English, and we're going to talk about it. Moida Ani reads here the following. Immediately upon awaking, recite this short prayer. Moida Ani lefanecha. I offer thanks to you, living and eternal King, for you have mercifully restored my soul within me. Your faithfulness is great. It's not a long prayer. It's not many words. It's short. Don't forget, we're still in bed. We're still just waking up. But actually, this short little prayer is extremely important. We're going to start off with a quick explanation about why it's written in Hebrew and how ideally it should be said in Hebrew. And the simpler understanding is that although you could say in any language, and Moida Ani could be said in any language, it could be said in the language that you're most familiar with. These words express your way of feeling about it most, but there is tremendous value to sing it Moida Ani in Hebrew, and that's because, as we're going to learn, Hebrew is the original language of Judaism. That's the language that Torah is written in, and Hebrew is also very, very exact. So when we say these words in Hebrew, we're saying it more in the original form. But having said that, if Hebrew is hard for us, then saying it in English is equally as good. And of course, what we could do is we could learn the Hebrew and get better at it whilst we're saying it in English, to the point that we're now ready to change and make the shift to say the Moida Ani. Now, this is important. We recite this prayer. Now, although this makes great material for a meditation, we could easily meditate on this and think about the greatness that there's a living and eternal King who had mercy on me and returned my soul that wasn't within me so much while I was sleeping, and now I've woken up refreshed. There's so much to think about. It's a wonderful meditation. However, the halacha tells us that it should be said, it should be verbalized. And that it should be verbalized because all prayers should come from the heart, but shouldn't remain in the heart. Yeah, of course, we need to put our heart into it. We should feel for what we're saying. But Moida Ani, like all other prayers, should be recited, should be expressed and put into the out in the open, and ideally actually should be said verbally in an audible format so you could hear yourself say it. That's the best. If not, at least say it without hearing it, say it quietly. But it should certainly be said and not just thought in your heart. And the idea is that as I say it, I connect with it more. It's not just something hidden in the abstract, in the depth of my heart, or in the front of my heart, but it's actually something that's made somewhat expressed into the real world. It's being said, and therefore it's being shared. That's really important. It's not just a meditation, it's a connection. And that's the Moida Ani, the first opening prayer. The first thing I say in the morning is Moida Ani. Best in Hebrew, verbalized, best audible. And we're going to talk about the position. This is actually minhag. It's custom. It's not mandatory. But there are many people who have the custom, first of all, to sit up, bow your head into a sign of obedience and acceptance of Hashem's wonderful greatness. And also the position of putting fingertips together is also a minhag that we say the Moida Ani that helps us concentrate on what we want to be doing, especially considering we've just woken up. Now let's talk about why Moida Ani is there. I want to share with you a beautiful story that was told over by the person who it happened with. It's a story that took place in Israel. I'm not sure when it took place, but the person who was in the story was a soldier. It was in the time while he was serving in the army. Like many Israeli people who at that age are serving, they work very, very hard during the week. And when they get a break, they go home, they sleep almost for 36 hours of the break, and they come right back. One of the customs.
Levi,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you.
Please.
Can you explain once again about the fingertips? I somehow missed this moment.
That one of the minhagim, one of the customs is that as we say the Moida Ani, we sit up, bend our head, and put our fingertips together to each other. I'm not sure if you can see on the screen.
Yes.
And then say the Moida Ani. The idea is it's supposed to help us concentrate and direct our thought process as we're saying Moida Ani, so that it's not just a ritual, it's also coming from the heart that we actually mean what we're saying.
So you actually have to sit up, not as
I'm gonna
soon as
skip
open.
the word have to. One, it's ideal to.
Yes,
Because
okay.
saying the words is have to, sitting up is is customary, and it's an add-on, so to speak. Okay?
Thank you.
Good. Not at all. I'm glad you asked. So going back to the story, this is the story of our friend, the soldier, and he is on his way home. One of the minhags, customs of the soldiers are that they pile up laundry, a whole full bag of laundry. And when they go home, they deposit the laundry by their mother or their family member. And when they wake up 36 hours later, the minhag is that someone's looked after the laundry and they come back. That's how it works for many a soldier. In this particular story, the guy's on his way home. And as the custom is in Israel, whether it's commendable or not, they hitchhike. You stand on the intersection, you put your finger out, and a car pulls over, and you see, where you're going? I'm going to such let me catch a ride. And they catch a ride. And obviously the guy's in soldier uniform. People are honored to be able to give him a ride. And he hitches a ride from where his army base is, that intersection, all the way almost to his house. And there he gets out. Now, in this particular story, he forgets his bag of laundry in the car. And he doesn't realize until he comes home where his mother says, "No, where's the laundry? I've been waiting for you." I said, "Oh, I don't know where it is. I must have left it in the car. Oh no, what am I going to do?" He's got a whole bag of all his laundry. In the meantime, he's too tired to think, crashes in bed. The minute he's time to go back, Shabbos is over, wherever it is, and he says to his mother, the best option I have is to go back to the same intersection, and hopefully, somehow, maybe I'll be able to spot the car that I had a ride in if I can remember what it looked like, and then maybe they'll know where my bag is. His great luck, he's standing on the same corner, and the car that gave him a ride there pulls over for him right away, and he go past the other, he guts him, comes in the car, "Thank you so much," and right there is his own bag. He's so excited, his laundry's there. As he gets to the intersection, as they go off, he says, thank you, dashes out the car, and he grabs the bag with him. When he opens the bag to see that everything's there, he realizes that everything in the bag is there, neatly folded, freshly laundered, with a note on the top of the bag that says, "Thank you very much for the opportunity to wash your laundry. It brought back memories of when my own son was in the army, and I would look forward to washing his laundry." You can imagine the joy in the soldier's life. Not only did he get back his laundry, but the fact that it was freshly laundered and that someone cared enough. Aha. This is a very good reason to say Moida Ani. We know what we feel like before we go to sleep. Washed out, not because we're fresh. We spent the whole day running here, running there, doing this, doing that, doing the other, and we're tired out. We're tired, and that's why we go to sleep. Yet we wake up in the morning refreshed. That refreshment is where we left down, we've ended the day in a tired out, and now we're rejuvenated. This is a second reason why we should be thankful. Obviously, for the very fact that we're alive, that we woke up, we're thankful. But more importantly, the fact that we woke up rejuvenated is a double reason to be thankful. Moida Ani, number one, we say, thank you, Hashem, for the gift of life. I don't just want to know it. I want it to be the direction that my day takes. I want it to be the direction that my day should be a grateful day, a day that I'll appreciate what came my way. And therefore, the opening words that I say are words of gratitude. But in particular, when I wake up rejuvenated, that's a double reason to be grateful. That I woke up more refreshed than I was last night. Now, you might tell me I woke up and I'm not fully refreshed. That often happens. But it tends to be that I'm more sleepy than tired. I'm not as tired as I went to sleep. I might be more sleepy now and not in the mood of getting up. But I've got more energy. I certainly do. Even if I have a restless night, I'm still more rested than before I went to sleep. Because that's what sleep does for us. It does rejuvenate us. And we should be grateful for that. Moida Ani. Just putting a little bit of mental science into this. Mental health tells us that two very important areas that we all benefit from. One is a sense of purpose. And number two, gratitude, to being grateful. Gives us both of this, give us better mental health. Well, Moida Ani covers both. First of all, we wake up in the morning, we say, I'm excited for today, because today is a purposeful day. It's not random. Moida Ani lefanecha, thank you, Hashem, you've created me. And number two, also, I'm saying thank you. So I'm both feeling a sense of purpose, and also I'm feeling grateful for what I have. Such a wonderful way to start our day. We start our day with Moida Ani. Nothing to do with shul, with synagogue, nothing to do with everybody else, but just between me and my life, me and my creator, me and my own purpose, being the best me. I start off my day, Moida Ani. Well, I would like to also point out a couple of nuances in the short prayer that could easily go unnoticed, undetected at first glance, but each word in that short prayer of Moida Ani is so beautifully written and it's so telling. Let's do some on the board. In Hebrew, the grammar usually says, Ani modeh, I thank. For some reason in Hebrew, the way it's written in this prayer, we say modeh ani. Ani means me. Modeh, grateful, I acknowledge, agree. So instead of saying I am grateful, we say grateful am I. What's amazing is that even in modern Hebrew, the normative way of saying it is Ani modelecha. I am grateful to you. But here is the emphasis. Even before I get carried away with self, with the me syndrome, which in today's day and age is so common. We are so aggressively self-absorbed. This is how media and marketing hammers us all the time. It's all about me. It's all what's in it for me. And the first opening words of the day reminds us, put ani second. Put me after grateful. Gratitude first. It's a beautiful nuance that we could easily miss. Modeh ani instead of ani modeh. Interesting also, we say modeh ani whilst we're still in bed. Before we've even washed our hands. And we're going to learn soon that actually we don't say anything. No prayers are said before washing our hands, with one exception. This one. This is the only thing that we can say without washing our hands. If we go to the restroom, if we go if we've gone to eat bread, whatever we do, we first wash our hands and then say the prayer. Moida Ani is said without washing our hands. The simple reason is because there's no mention of God's name. Hashem's not mentioned clearly in it, but on a deeper reason is because Moida Ani is before we've been distracted. I've not even had a chance to start thinking. I'm still in bed. And at that point, it's the purest expression of my soul. And at the depth of my soul is so powerful you are, that even without washing your hands, it won't contaminate. It won't be classed as impure. And therefore we say Moida Ani without washing our hands because it's an expression of the core of who we are. We're not even going to wait and delay till we wash our hands, at which point we could already get distracted. Very first opening words. Another interesting thing, we use the word lefanecha. Moida Ani, I'm grateful before you. How many times do we hear people say, oh, I'm so grateful, I'm so grateful. But grateful to who? Grateful to what? The idea, the concept of having someone or something that cared enough to make sure that I have what I need is the gift of the giver. More than the gift of life itself is the gift that the Almighty considered it important enough to make sure that I have life. Lefanecha, thank you. Not just thanks. I offer thanks. I offer thanks to you, you with a capital Y, the gift of the carer, the gift of Hashem. Amazing, interesting nuance. We also refer to Hashem as Melech, the king, king of the universe. Why do we use the word king? Because king implies that he's the ruler, that life isn't random. It's not a jungle. There's a commander-in-chief that is in charge of this world. And equally, this commander-in-chief has a plan and a purpose for every creation, including myself. And I have an order of the day, every day. Melech ha'olam. I'm grateful to you, who is the king, who has given me instruction, purpose, direction for today as I wake up my day. We also say an interesting word. We are grateful to you for my soul. We don't say for the soul or for a soul. Nishmasi, my soul. Now it's a nuanced word, and it's there to imply that actually the soul that I have is uniquely mine. It's uniquely mine because my soul was tailor-made for my unique mission in life. It's nishmasi. And as I start off my day, I need to remind myself, yes, it's true that I'm grateful, and I'm grateful to you. And I'm grateful because you've given me a purpose, and that purpose is mine uniquely. I have a specific mission that Hashem has created me for. And we also use the word bechemla, in his mercy. Hashem in his mercy has granted me life. Why do we want to say in his mercy? Because in a generation of entitlement, where everyone feels entitled to everything, I start off my day and I remind myself that my life has come in his mercy. Do I really believe that I deserve everything that I have? Nishmasi bechemla, my soul was returned to me in his mercy, in his kindness. Life is a gift. And of course, when life is a gift, I treat it that way. One final thought. Moida Ani is said as the opening of the first of the day. It also halachically helps because oftentimes we know people do things robotically. How many times have I done something that's a good deed, but I haven't even thought about it? I've done it almost without thinking. And that's why we start off the day with a statement that will say, everything that life is going to throw at me, every good deed that I'm going to do is done for you, Hashem. It's done for you. And even if I don't have that in mind later, at least at the beginning, I'm having that in mind now. Moidani lefanecha, wonderful, wonderful prayer. It's a great prayer to memorize. And also it's a great prayer to start us off on the right foot. And if we get onto the right train at the beginning of the day, we're heading down the right tracks. We still need to work hard to get that train to move, but at least we're headed in the right direction. So that's step number one. We spoke about starting our day. We started off the first thing with the Moida Ani. For the rest of the class, in the time that we've got left, I would like to cover about 4 more points. We're going to be talking about the next step, which is going to be dress for success. We're going to be talking about Netilas Yadayim. We're going to be talking about Asher Yotzar. We'll be talking about the 14 brachas that we make. And then we'll talk about Torah, the bracha that we make on Torah. Now we're going to go through a step by step. We're up to step number 2, in which we're going to explain and talk about the idea of dressing like a Judaism at home type person, the Jewish way of dressing. Now, interestingly, you know what? Let's just see if there's any questions. If anyone wants to unmute himself, if you have any observations, comments, or questions, you can do so now. It's a good time when it's in between breaks. If anyone doesn't have any questions, I'm glad to hear. I hope it's not because you're not, I've lost you. But if you do have anything, I'm happy to try and answer, or you can write it on the chat. Otherwise, I'm happy to take emails or messages later. We're going to go on to the second step. And if anyone has any questions, I'll be looking out for them. Step number 2 was dressing for success. Let's put the slide up. Success. Now, this is a picture of, you might call it a black and white picture from a black and white generation. It happens to be that this is the Rebbe in his younger days. It's actually when he just got engaged with his father-in-law, who was the previous Rebbe. I chose this picture because it's in black and white. And I chose this picture because we can try and imagine that there were times where dressing was considered mainstream, very different than it is today. My daughters were discussing today that in Victorian times, they learned, people dressed far more modestly than they do today. Interesting, true fact, fun fact. But that sort of idea where there's a code of conduct for how we dress. And amazingly, the halacha covers everything, including stuff that we do between ourselves. Every area in life, just to put out there why it makes sense for halacha, Jewish law, to cover personal stuff. If you open up the code of Jewish law, the Shulchan Aruch, you'll find there are areas that talk about morality. There are areas that talk about spirituality. But there's also quite a bit of area that covers personal, regular life. And that's also included, and it's all legislated what should and shouldn't be done. And one of those are going to be clothing. Just before we get into it, let's talk for a second why that makes sense. There's a reason why personal matter should be legislated and dictated by the halacha, and that is because the word mitzvah, which usually translates as commandment, sometimes known as a good deed, because anything that God tells us to do is obviously good, and therefore it's good to do a mitzvah, a good deed. But tzavsa, which is the Aramaic word for connecting, is from the same root as mitzvah. And that's exactly what a mitzvah does. Mitzvah connects us with Hashem. Now, we all remember our grandparents or great-grandparents, or we don't remember, but in an ideal world where marriage was considered sacred and holy, marriage meant that you were married entirely, not partially. I'm married up until this point, but this is my own personal life. That sort of idea where we connect in our entirety, that's what a mitzvah is supposed to be. Not just do this and then you're off the hook, but entirety of me, all of us, not just all of us, but the all of every one of us should be part of that connection between us and our Creator. Or you might say us and our inner self. And that connection comes when we don't just have rituals that we have to do for moral matters or for spiritual matters, but everything about us is part of that journey of connecting to inner self. And that's why even the mundane areas of our life, our personal matters, our regular stuff, are also part of the halacha. And then if you go into the mystical side of things, you'll get dir b'tachtonim, where really the reason why we were created in the first place, and that's not just me personally when I was born, the reason why creation came to be is because we're on a mission to make this universe, this planet that we live in, into a home for Hashem. A home is a place where we feel comfortable. We want the Almighty to feel comfortable in this world. And everything we do in this world is for that. It's for in order to make Hashem, the Almighty, feel comfortable here. And that's true not just of in shul, or not just in places of holiness, but in the mundane, in the regular part of our life. That's where it's really at. When we can make Hashem feel comfortable in our personal life. If I'm getting dressed in a way that makes Hashem feel comfortable at home, in my bedroom, in my dressing room, now we have Hashem really feeling at home in the world He created. That's living up to what we were born for. So that's another reason why the Shulchan Aruch makes us and it helps us, directs us, encourages us how we should successfully dress in order to be a Jewish start to our day. So we dress for success. Number one, even if we're staying in, we get reasonably dressed. We get dressed up. We don't stay half dressed. We get properly dressed. Self-respecting people dress. And equally, whilst we're getting dressed, we get dressed in a modest way. What we get dressed in also in a modest way, because we have self-respect. That ties into what my kids were talking about today. In Victorian times, people respected themselves. It was considered disrespectful to have your ankle showing, let alone any other area that wasn't considered right. And of course, every generation and every area has their own mode of dress. For some places, wearing socks is unheard of, wear sandals. That's included in the halacha. But we should take in consideration that the way we're getting dressed, whether or not anyone else is going to see us, Hashem is going to see us. And by getting dressed modestly and appropriately every day, that in itself invites, welcomes, but also reminds us that we are constantly in the presence of Hashem. We're in this partnership. And getting dressed is part of that partnership. We get dressed for our partner. We recognize that we are in a partnership with Hashem, with the Almighty, and therefore we're getting dressed appropriately. What a wonderful reason to get dressed. What a spectacular, what a fantastic reason to wake up in the morning and put on clothes. Not only because you're going to impress somebody else, but out of self-respect. This also makes even the dressing now becomes a way of making Hashem comfortable. It becomes an opportunity to make life special. Another interesting thing that I'd like you to notice on the picture that's on the screen, if you've got a screen there, there's a picture there of both these rabbis. Obviously, it's a black and white picture, but you can still see the right side of their jackets are on top of the left side of the jacket. Now, those of us who do clothing or whatever, you tend to know that for men's clothing, usually it's left over right. The Hasidic garb, you might, if you ever looked into a rekel or a sirtuk, or a kapata, a tishbekacha. These are different names of Hasidic clothing that people wear. They're all sewn with a button that buttons right over left. Interesting. You know, if you don't know about fashion, you don't necessarily pick up the nuances. But this is one of the nuances of Hasidic fashion, right over left. So much so when you buy a regular suit, which is usually for men would be left over right, you add, we tend to add in, for those who do, an extra button that allows for the jacket to close right over left, so that it closes the other way around. What's the idea of right over left? This is not in the halacha. This is not in the Torah law, so it's not mandatory. But the halacha does mention getting dressed right before left. So we have two arms, thank goodness. Baruch Hashem. Which arm should I put into my sweater first? Did you ever think? Here's the opportunity. The right hand goes in first, and then the left hand. I'm putting on a pair of trousers, I'm putting on a pair of socks, right foot first, left foot second. Right goes before left. Says the halacha, the reason for this is, throughout the Torah, whenever we have mention of a hand or a leg being used for a mitzvah, classic example might be the Metzora or the anointing process. So then the right thumb, the right earlobe, the right foot, the right toe, all these parts that are used in part of the procedure, its right is given precedence and honor over the left. And therefore, when we get dressed, we do the same thing. We do it in a Jewish way, in a Torah way. We get dressed that way. What's the meaning behind it? What's the reasoning behind it? We'll talk about in a second. First, I just want to give you the exceptions to the rule. And the exceptions to the rules are that the tying up of anything. So let's say you've got a bow that I tie up on the end of my sleeve. So I've got a right sleeve and a left sleeve. Or more commonly, I'm tying shoelaces. So I'm tying my right shoe and my left shoe. That's an exception. We do first the left shoe and then the right shoe. So amazing, if I'm putting on shoes, I'll put on the right shoe first and then put the left shoe on. But when it comes to tying them, I now tie my left shoe first and only afterwards tie my right shoe. I've got someone, is unmuted? Someone asked a question?
What happens if you're left-handed?
Oh, you took it out, the words out of my mouth. The answer is left-handed people, halachically, their left hand is considered your right hand. So they would do it the other way around. They're whatever we just said, right and then left, they do left and then right, the other way around. That's generally how it works. With right-handed people, their right hand is halachic, their right hand is their stronger hand. And the other exception that we're going to say, obviously besides the tying, is going to be removing. So when I take off my jumper, when I take off my socks, I remove the left one and then the right one. And that again is just in order to emphasize the honor given to the right one, where the right one remains dressed for longer than the left one. What's the idea of giving honor to one side of the body over the other side of the body, which is just one person? How can it be significant? And it goes back to a Kabbalistic mystical idea where right and left are the two general aspects, general sefirot, the general ways of Hashem operating. One is in the way of chesed, which is kindness, and the other one is gevura. Gevura is severity or judgment. So severity and judgment being on the left side, which is more forceful but less powerful. And you have right side kindness, which is more giving, and that's the right side, which we want to give more honor to. Why so? Says the Kabbalah, brought down in Zohar, Hashem copies, Hashem copies the shadow, is the shadow to what we do. So by us behaving in a way that gives honor and precedence to right, we are encouraging ourselves to behave that way, but more importantly, our soul is asking from Hashem that he should behave in return to us, giving precedence to mercy and kindness over severity, over being judgmental and being exacting to us, which isn't bad. But in our case, if we're less than deserving, then we're asking Hashem for kindness all the time. We therefore give honor and respect to the right side. Interesting idea. And that explains why when we get dressed, and this, as you can see in the picture, the right side should be over and overpowering on top of the left side, the chesed over the gevura. That's an interesting idea. As we said, getting dressed right before left is in the Shulchan Aruch. Right over left is an add-on, which is certainly, in a mystical point of view, very important, But from a halachic point of view, it's ideal, not necessarily mandatory. So that's a little bit about getting dressed right and left. We also want to say that there is another aspect to getting dressed, and that is washing our face. Washing our face, I borrowed this from the internet. The washing of the face is in the halacha. Every day, I mean, today everyone does this anyhow, but you can imagine before there was plumbing and running water, it was considered a big deal to spare water to wash your face. But in the halacha, it talks about washing your face every day. Why so? Even today, we can benefit from knowing this. The reason why we wash our face, brought down in the halacha, is because we are created in the image of God, the image of Hashem. And therefore, making sure that we look presentable and we look clean, clear, is like you have a replica of the king and you wipe it down to make sure it's clean and it's not filthy. When we wash our face, we're reminding ourselves that we need to be presentable because we are carrying the image of Hashem. We freshen up each morning. It's brought down in the halacha. After washing our hands, we also wash our face. And then also brought down the halacha that when we have image of God, we wear a yarmulke. We cover our head before we say brachas for men. Cover our head. The word yarmulke is made up of two words, yarei malka. Today it's just known as a kippah. But a yarei malka means that we remind ourselves that there's a higher power, something above us. And then also, additionally, one of the things that comes to do with dressing was for men as well, although this is not mandatory from a biblical level, but on a rabbinic level, in rabbinic legislation, ideally every man should put on a pair of tzitzis, wear strings on a four-corner garment. And as the parasha we say in Shema, it reminds us, it reminds us of all the mitzvahs that we have to do. If you think about it, the reason why in official places you've got to wear a uniform, get a semi-decent job, you've got to come dressed up. You become a policeman or a police person, or you're a nurse or whatever else it might be, there's going to be a uniform you've got to wear. Part of what it does, it obviously makes everyone uniform and everyone's the same, but also what it does, it makes sure that it reminds us where we are, what responsibilities we carry. And tzitzis does that for us. At least wear a talis when we're davening, if you're not going to wear tzitzis all the time, but that sort of idea where there's a uniform of how we get dressed, and that dressing is there, not just because we want to look good for everyone else, but out of self-respect, self-meaning, the soul who I am. And for that soul's purpose, I wash my face, I wear a yarmulke, I get dressed modestly, I put on the right side, because everything that I'm doing carries meaning for it. And that's the second point I wanted to discuss about starting off the right way. Okay, we're now going to speed up a little bit because the next few steps are going to be slightly more common, but we're not going to get so carried away into the detail. The third thing is going to be washing our hands. Now, we all know that today that washing your hands is a massive big deal. Whether you're washing with just sanitizer or you're washing with warm water and soap or whatever else it is. And of course, there's discussion when you go to shul, please go when it opens up. Should we have on Shabbos sanitizer or should we be having soap that you're not going to have hot water for? The whole discussion the bottom line is we need to be washing our hands properly every time. And that's what we want to talk about, because washing our hands is great. But if we don't do it properly, if there's no sign that shows exactly how to do it, and for long enough, and for all the corners and everything, then we haven't properly washed our hands. We've almost not washed at all. And the same is true when it comes to washing our hands for ritual washing. Ritual washing, there's ways to do it. And when it's done properly, it works. When it's not done properly, it doesn't really work. So let's go through the ideas of washing our hands, which is the next step. After let's put it on the board. When do we do it? After we've been to the restroom. After we've got dressed and we're all ready. Now it's time to wash our hands for a ritual washing. We've already washed our hands with soap, whatever else it is. In the morning, we washed our face. Now we're washing our hands for the ritual and Netilas Yadayim. And where should we do that? Not in the bathroom. Anywhere else. Why not in the bathroom? Because we're about to make a bracha. We're going to say a blessing. And blessings, the mention of Hashem's name, can't be done in a place where it's normal to be in that sort of non-dressed circumstance. And therefore, the rule is, whichever room needs a mezuzah on the door, that's the kind of room you could use to make a bracha. So when I'm washing the hands, you might be in your kitchen, it might be somewhere else you've got a tap, maybe in your bedroom, but not in a bathroom or a restroom. That's where What do? Number one, we check our hands are clear. That means no dirt, so we've washed the hands with soap, but equally no rings. Or if you have something that's on your hand, a plaster, a band-aid, or if you have something that's stuck to your hand, or if you have something written on your hand, before we wash our hands, we clear our hands. Make sure it's clean, it's no obstructions, so that when the water pours on the hand, it's poured properly, entirely. Number two, we use a washing cup. Some cups are kosher, some cups are not kosher. Ideally, it's got to be a cup that's large enough that will have enough water to do all the pourings. Equally, it's got to be a cup that's not cracked. It's not got a spout. It's got to be a cup that's a clear cup. They actually sell hand washing cups. Dime hands. You might have seen it in a shul. And then we fill up that cup full with water. Interestingly, the Talmud tells us that if you pour a lot of water, that shows a sign of how you enjoy doing this mitzvah, which is a source of blessings for the whole day. So yes, fill up a full cup of water. And then we wash again our right hand first, unless you're left-handed. And if you're left-handed, then your left hand is your right hand, so you do your left hand first. But let's assume we're right-handed, right hand first. Number four, we wash. This is the important bit. This is what people often miss. I want to emphasize this. From the wrist to the fingertips is all included. So as I pour, each pour covers the entire hand from the wrist up until the fingertips. And it pours a full pour over the whole hand. This is true when we're washing for bread. This is true when we wake up in the morning. And this is true every time we richly wash our hands. If you're a Kohen and you're going to wash your hands before doing the blessings, the bracha and the brachas Kohanim, we wash our hands from the wrist to the fingertips, generally. Exception would be Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av, but generally that's what we do. And in those cases, you put your finger knuckles, but the entire hand should be covered, each and every pour. Okay, number five. Right, left, right, left, right, left. That was 3 times. Right, left, right, left, right, left. Very different to when we eat bread. When we eat bread, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So it's right, 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 left, left, left. But when we wake up in the morning, when we're trying to get rid of the impurities of the morning, it's right, left, right, left, right, left. And the reason for that is brought down beautifully in Reb Chaim Vital's book. He was the Talmud, the student of the Arizal. So this is straight up Kabbalah, in which he describes that you have impurities that attach to a person. Generally, a dead body is considered impure. If a person comes in contact with a dead body, that's considered impurity. And when a person's asleep, it's compared somewhat to like we've been in a state of less life. When we wake up in the morning, the impurity of less life, of sleep, goes away from us, but it remains in the last place on our hands, on our fingers. And that's why we wash our hands, to get rid of the impurities that remain. Well, we're going to learn that there's an impurity that's persistent. And of course, water, we know, washes away impurity, both physically, but also spiritually. We go into a mikveh to become pure. Washing our hands was done in the ritual purification process way back when, in the times of kodshim, of our offerings and sacrifices. But that persistent impurity that's trying to grab a hold of me will jump from one end to the other, called seirugin, backwards, forwards ocean. And that's how we chase it down, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And that's the idea of left, right, left, right, left, right, left. Bit of Kabbalah that might help you appreciate it. It might help us remember how to do it. So again, we said wrist to fingertips, left, right, left, right, left, right, left 3 times. And then, of course, dry your hands and then say the bracha. Which bracha? We're going to put this on the screen. And blessed are you, Lord our King, Elokeinu melech haolam, King of the universe, Asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvosav, who has sanctified us through and with his commandments. He's made us holy, made us special, by telling us how to do special things, his commandments. And what has he given us? He's commanded us concerning the washing of the hands. And obviously, it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that we have to wash our hands. But our sages taught us to wash our hands, and it does say in Devarim that we are commanded to follow the rulings of our sages. And that's why we make a bracha and we say God's name. We say, thank you for giving us the instruction to wash our hands, at least indirectly, because you've instructed us to listen to the legislation of the Chachamim, this legislation of the sages that have taught us to wash our hands. So that's what we do when we wash our hands. we dry it, we clear our hands, fill up a full washing cup, hand first, and then we wash wrist to fingertip, right, left, right, left, right, left, dry our hands, and then say the bracha. Now, we're going to learn in the next class that when it comes to eating bread, it's slightly different in a couple of points. But for in the morning, this is how we do it. This is what we do when we wash our hands in Netilas Yadayim. And again, we said this is not in a bathroom, and this is after we got dressed. And we're going to talk about why, but I think I hear a question coming. Does anyone want to ask a question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Just two questions, two very quick questions. Is it for women as well exactly the same about the washing of hands in the morning?
Yes.
And also, can we wash it like downstairs, or does it have to be around the bedroom area?
To do it downstairs is even better. The idea is that we're going to be making a bracha wherever we finish washing our hands, and then we set ourselves up to be in a place where we can best concentrate, and we're not in a place that's inappropriate to mention Hashem's name. So yeah, downstairs is even better, and washing our hands properly, and then of course you've got a towel to hand, and you've got the washing cup, perhaps keep it down there, and then you're good to go. Yes, very good. Fantastic. Okay. Well now, if anyone has any other questions, please, anytime. Yes, please.
Yeah, I thought, well, from what I read in the Mishnah, that the priority was to do Netilah first of all, before you even wash your face or anything, because the Tuma in your hands is transferred to your face.
Beautiful.
So I don't know whether it's minagim, what it is, but.
Okay, so now I'm going to borrow what Ash has just told us and go back a little bit, because I did skip out one step, which is halachically less vital than what we've just learned, but actually the Netilas Yadayim washing that we've just described ideally should be washing number 2. Washing number 2 means that ideally, whilst still in bed, right after saying Modani, even before I get out of bed, or before I get dressed, I wash my hands already then. I don't make any bracha.
Yeah, because you're not supposed to make 4 steps.
Not necessarily 4 steps. Now, how could you wash your hands in your bed? So there's 2 ways about it. Some people, certainly a Hasidic custom and the Kabbalistic custom, which is highly commendable if you can do it, is to prepare a bowl that has a washing cup inside of it. And the bowl is large enough that at your bedside, you can still wash your hands. Second to that would be to go straight to the wash basin, ideally if it's less than 6 foot away. But even if it's more than 6 foot away, there are opinions that say it's still counted. And you can go there and wash your hands, still without a blessing. I've not even been to the restroom. I've not got dressed. I've not done anything else, not brushed my teeth. I wash my hands before I do anything. And then that's the step where I can wash my face. And that's called Negel
When you
Wasser.
say wash your hands, you're saying just wash your hands, not doing Netilah.
We do it with a natal. We do it with a cup. That should also ideally be done with a wash cup.
Yeah,
the only thing that's done different is without the bracha. And the reason why there's no bracha is because it's not the real Netilat Yadayim. It's almost a mystical add-on that we add on right after our It's brought down in the halacha, but it's the add-on, and therefore we've focused on the Netilas Yadayim. The Netilas Yadayim is the one that we do after we've been to the bathroom, after we've got dressed and we're all ready, we've washed our face, we're now presentable, we're now ready to start connecting, verbalizing to Hashem and saying blessings. But yes, you are right, Asher, that before that, there's even a more ideal way of doing it, that we wash our hands as a temporary starter, even though we're not making the blessing, but before we touch our clothing, before we go ahead and do anything, before we come in contact with anything else, we first wash our hands, and that's in order to start chasing away the impurity. That's an add-on. Yes. Okay, so I think it answered the question, but it also was an opportunity to describe one more step that we could add on, know about, and we'll grow into. But I would say, if we're going to start off with one, I would start off with the Netilas Yadayim, and then as we're ready to grow, go back and also do the Negel Wasser in bed. Okay, so far we've described, number 1, Madani. Number 2, we've described getting dressed the Jewish way. And number 3, we've now done Netilas Yadayim, washing our hands, a ritual washing, already else we're dressed downstairs, wherever it may be. And we said the bracha, we just have to fill in now, why are we doing this Netilas Yadayim? We're going to put this on the screen here. We have number one is here to serve. When I wash my hands, I am copying, I am emulating an age-old tradition from the times of the Beis Hamikdash and the Mishkan, the house of Hashem, where Kohanim, who were effectively the priests of the Beis Hamikdash, of Hashem's house, would do the service of Hashem on behalf of all the people, and they were the servicemen of Hashem. Before they started doing anything, they would wash their hands. That's why today, when Kohanim in a shul are going to go to bless the people, which is similar to the actual service in the Beis Hamikdash, they will also wash their hands. We start off our day and we remind ourselves, we are mindful that we are here to serve. We are here in service of Hashem, and we're washing our hands before we start our day. And we'll make a bracha over that. And we'll say, thank you, Hashem, for giving us the instruction of being mindful that we are here to serve. Obviously, that would be similar. That would explain why we need a cup. Just like in the Beis Hamikdash, in the temple, that we need to have the kiyar, the vessel in order to wash. We need to have a utensil. It can't just be, make sure your hands are rubbed and there's no filth in them, they're hygienically cleaned. They have to be ritually cleaned. And that's the ritual washing of Netilas Yadayim. That's point number one. Point number two, an additional point, is that we have to be clean as well. Overnight, our hands go all over the place. The quote from the Talmud is, Yodayim askani yosem. Hands are busy. Hands tend to be busy. That's just the way the nature Hashem created us. And that's why our hands need to be extra clean. And part of washing our hands in Netilas Yadayim is to making sure that they're ready for that. And therefore, we are cleaning our hands physically and spiritually. That's point number two. Obviously, we have to be clean before we say any prayers or blessings or mention Hashem's name. And then point number three is going to be Kedusha. And we mentioned this passing before. When a person's asleep, it's somewhat like in the state of not alive. It's a minute level of death, where a person's there and not productive, not active. So when we wake up again, that impurity needs to be washed away. Amazingly, we're told that the impurity remains on the hand the last. And it has to do with the fact that the hands are the most active and they reach all over. And therefore the hands are almost like the end of the body. If we think about how special human beings are, the power of intelligence, the power of emotions, the power to achieve, action, deed is the bottom of the ladder. And the bottom of the ladder, deed, is exemplified and is highlighted in the hands, and the hand, which is the most active part of the action side of a human being, is where the impurity remains last. And so when a person wakes up, we are told that by the Kabbalah that their hands retain the last remnants of impurity, and that will be washed away with Netilas Yadayim, as we mentioned earlier. So it's the ritual impurity that we're chasing away. And then there's one more important bit. It says number two, but really should be number four, and that is where the previous Rebbe would explain it. The previous Rebbe would explain that when we wake up in the morning, our soul is pure. But as we start thinking, as we start remembering what we went to sleep with, what usually happens to human beings is that all the worries, all the balagan, all the distortion and distraction of life come flooding back. And what usually happens then is we become unsettled. What's going to be with this? How am I going to sort out that? Oh, and this, that, and the other. And we wash away all those worries. We remind ourselves that Hashem is in control. And as we're washing our hands the proper way, wrist to fingers, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, with a proper cup, and then we dry our hands and say a bracha, we're reminding ourselves that we are safely in the hands of Hashem. And Hashem's got it figured out. And therefore wash away the idea of worries at least a little bit. And that's another idea, perhaps a deeper meaning or message, a life message of how to start off our day in a good way. So that's how we have 4 ideas of why we should wash. We've learned when we should wash, where we should wash, and how to wash in the Netilas Yadayim way. We're now going to move on to the next step, which is going to be after we finish Netilas Yadayim. We're now ready for Asher Yotzar. Asher Yotzar is the next bracha that we make after we've said the Netilas Yadayim blessing. We thank Hashem for, and we want the mitzvah, the commandment, the sanctification of washing hands. We're now ready to do the next one, which is Asher Yatzar. The picture on the screen is one of the wonders of creation. One of the wonders of creation. This is a beautiful, fantastical waterfall. And you can only imagine, I'm sure some of us at least have been to some really, really special places in creation, seen some really fantastical, just enormous, like magnificent creations of Hashem. And when you stand there and you just realize what's going on, the greatness of what's happening, we're wowed. We're mesmerized. We're just blown away by what we're seeing. Yet for some reason, the bodily functions of day-to-day life, which are enormously magnificent in themselves, the fact that we can relieve ourselves and be healthy, and we can do that in a healthy way, that itself is also an enormous miracle. And the idea is that now that we've washed our hands, we want to look around and recognize the wonders of Hashem. And the best place to start is our own bodily functions. We should have relieved ourselves by now. It's part of the process of waking up. And this now's the time to try and create the emotional impact of being wowed by the wonders of Hashem's creation. That's really what we're going to read now. We're going to read the blessing of Asher Yatzar and read how this is what it does for us. So remember, we've started off the day with being grateful, Modani. We've got dressed in a Jewish way. We've said and washed our hands and said the blessing of ritual purity. And now we say Asher Yatzar. And it reads the following, and read it in English. Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you, Lord our King, God, King of the universe, who formed humans and formed man with wisdom, and created within him many orifices and cavities, the whole intestines, kishkas. It's revealed and known before the throne of your glory that if but one of them were to be blocked, or one of them were to be opened, if one part of the system, the intestines, wouldn't work appropriately, it would be impossible to exist even for a short while. It's considered an emergency. If someone's intestines are failing, they have to quickly go and have help. Blessed are you, Lord, who heals all flesh and performs wonders. Amazing. The wonders of our life. Now, this bracha, the Asher Yatzar bracha, is a bracha that it was said, is a blessing that we say specifically after coming out of the toilet and after the bathroom. And after we come out of the restroom, ideally every time. There are many places where they'll have a card that has this bracha on the door outside of the toilet, so we can say that. But the main time to say it is in the morning at the start of the day. And we thank Hashem for creating us and making it possible for us to live in such a wondrous way. Wow, thank you, Hashem. So at least in the beginning of the day, we can say it with meaning and concentrate on how wonderful it is that, thank goodness we're not in hospital. We're not piped up and wired to machines to try and help it work. The wonders of Hashem's creation. Interestingly, I'm going to just point out that we have two interesting expressions. One is that we call Hashem the healer. I'm not sure if you can see my... Blessed are you, Lord God, who heals all flesh. We call Hashem the healer of all flesh. Healing implies that there is an issue that needs to be healed, and that's extremely appropriate for today, because even if we personally aren't suffering or are not ill, thankfully, we know that there's healing necessary in the world, both for people who are ill, but also there are illnesses that need cures. There are problems that need to be solved. And Hashem is the healer of all those problems. In today's day and age, we can relate to that very much. There's a pandemic, even if nobody is ill with it, and nobody has caught it, and please God, everyone's getting better from it, we still need to develop a vaccine and an immunization to it and all that. And all those sorts of efforts, which are being made by so many clever people today, which we are so grateful to. But we recognize that all of the efforts of humanity come together with Hashem's blessings, because at the end of the day, God is the healer of all flesh. So it's almost like we understand a partnership. We create the vessels for which Hashem's blessing of healing to come into. So as scientists and researchers are finding methods of healing, they're praying that Hashem's healing comes through that. At least we are praying, even if they don't recognize that, we recognize that the healing of Hashem that comes through each one of those beautiful and fantastical inventions. What's interesting is that not only are we saying that Hashem, as the healer of all flesh, is in partnership with us, but we are in partnership with him. In other words, as the Rambam writes, exercising every morning is required and mandated in halacha. Because looking after our physical health is midarki Hashem, is part of service of Hashem. You just throw in here a quick idea that the Rebbe pointed out. The reason why we were born, that we need to invest in our health. Why could we not have been born to just be healthy? And we should be healthy on our own. And the reason is because the Almighty wants us to be partners in creation. What sort of partnership would it be if it's one-sided? Instead, Hashem created that we can invest in that partnership, thereby making our health, our life, a connection between us and Hashem. What a wonderful reason to be healthy. I'm in partnership with Hashem. I'm working together in tandem with the Almighty in making his beautiful creation called me healthy. And that's a very good reason to start off our day grateful and also noticing the wonders in creation, but equally, therefore, going ahead and leading a healthy life, which is part and included in the Ashiyot Bracha. I'm going to throw in now a side point, and that's going to be language, because we've already spoken about 2 or 3 blessings. We're going to be talking about more. And we started off saying that language is important. The language we should be saying things in is in Hebrew. Jewish prayers are ideally said in Hebrew. And the reason for that is, number one, is it's the native tongue of all the prayers. The Torah, which is the blueprint for all of Yiddishkeit and for creation, is in Hebrew. And we're told that Hashem used Hebrew letters to create. Like the word for stone, which is Even, is Aleph Vei Nun. And those are the letters with which Hashem verbalized creation. When Hashem said, let there be light, and there was light, that was said in Hebrew. And therefore, Hebrew is the language of creation, which explains why, another reason why it would be ideal to be able to pray in Hebrew. So, number one, it's the native and the Torah creational things, but also it's the original language in which the prayers were written, and therefore the accuracy and the potency of the words, the richness of every word is in its original form. And therefore, in prayer in particular, it would be ideal to be able to say the words of a prayer, of a blessing in the original word. And our third point would be the encoding. And that is in the nuances, the choice of words, the letters, the vowels. There's deep and esoteric meaning in each and every one of those words. So even though we could say the same thing in 2 different ways or many different ways, and Hebrew is a very rich language, the choice of wording is so exact, which will be entirely lost in translation. So therefore, ideally the language would be Hebrew. We would much prefer to say it in Hebrew. However, we're talking about a connection between myself and Hashem, or myself and my inner soul. If I don't understand what I'm saying, the loss outweighs the gain. If I don't know what I'm talking about and it means nothing to me, then saying it in Hebrew is not ideal. It's better to say it in a language that I understand and therefore say it in English or Russian or Chinese or French, whatever you understand. But at the same time, there's 2 ways around that. Number one is what we call kavana klalis. If I want to say it, I'm able to say it in Hebrew. Even if I don't understand the Hebrew, as long as I have in mind the general concept, I am now praying to Hashem. I'm connecting with Hashem on a special way. Even if I don't understand why this word connects me to Hashem, it's almost like I'm pushing a pre-programmed button that works. And that's also very good. And therefore, I could say it in Hebrew. And even better still is to train up. Train up would mean say it in English, but in the meantime, get some practice and more practice and more practice and learn what it means. So that way, in a short while from now, I'll be doing another prayer in Hebrew. And from there, I'll be going to another prayer and another prayer in Hebrew. And that would be the ideal way to do it. So in summary, Hebrew would be the ideal, but practically, more times than not, it's a good idea to say it in your own words as well. And of course, try and train up and have in mind the general concept. So that's a little bit about language. thrown in there. We're now going to move on to the last two steps. The last two steps of today's classes. One is going to be the morning brachas, and the second one is going to be the blessings of the Torah. The morning brachas. Remember, we start off by saying we want to make the morning a good morning. We've already done Moed Ani. We've got dressed. We've washed our hands. We've said Asher Yotzar. Can we have a coffee? Can we have a coffee yet? And the answer is going to be not yet. Not yet. It's a good idea to have coffee. Funnily enough, in the end of the 1600s, there was a great rabbi who wrote a sefer called Pri Chadash. He lived in Israel, but he writes that it's okay and it's kosher to have a coffee, especially if it's going to open your mind before davening. And then he adds in Egypt, he's talking about the Egyptian Jewish community in Egypt, they cannot concentrate without a coffee. That's what he writes in the Pri Chadash. This is the 17th century Egyptian bondage of coffee. But yes, it's okay to have a coffee, but not yet, because we're almost ready. Before we do that, we're going to throw in the Birchas HaShachar, the morning blessings. And the morning blessings, we're going to start off with how are they said? There are 14 blessings that should be said standing up. Now, before we get to the 14 blessings, I must throw in there is the Elokai Neshama. Elokai Neshama, we've had actually in one of our previous JLI classes, an entire class that dedicated to Elokai Neshama. For an hour and a half, we discussed it. But it's an elaborate Moed Ani. Same theme of Moed Ani, but on the next level, which elaborates and emphasizes that sort of idea. And then we go into the 14 brachas. If you have ever heard of a bracha over an iPhone, a bracha over your phone, so it's not really over your phone, but if you use your phone for an alarm clock, this is included. Because the first of those 14 brachas is a bracha that we thank Hashem for the rooster that wakes us up in the morning. Now, even though today we don't use roosters, and thank goodness we have old-fashioned alarm clocks or iPhones or whatever else you use as a waker-upper. Thank goodness in some houses we have kinderlach, we have children that wake us up in the morning. Whatever it is, however you wake up in the morning, we should be grateful that those woke us up, because if not, we'd sleep through the day. Maybe not. But we should be grateful for that as well. And therefore we say, thank you, Hashem, hanoisein l'sech vivina. Thank you, Hashem, who gives the rooster understanding to distinguish between day and night. Interestingly, I think on the BBC, there was a 2013 article in which they wrote about a test that they did. They took roosters and put them into a dimly lit room for 14 days straight, and the light didn't change. And they wanted to see if the rooster crowed at the right time. Turns out that they must have somehow an inbuilt clock, because it was almost exactly every 24 hours the rooster crowed. So we're thanking Hashem that there is a programmable or timed waker-uppers that can wake us up in the morning. That's one sort of idea. Interestingly, there are many other commentaries that explain that we're not just thanking Hashem for the rooster that wakes us up, we're also thanking Hashem for all sorts of wonders in the animal kingdom. There are tremendously wondrous creations in the animal kingdom, and we're thanking Hashem for giving us animals that have all sorts of understandings. The rooster has it for day and night. We can still say the same bracha for all the other interesting things that we might have noticed. There's a deeper explanation still, and that is the explanation that sechvi can also mean heart. If sechvi means God gives the heart understanding, to understand the difference between day and night, day meaning good, bright, ideal, night meaning not good, dark, less than ideal. Hashem gives us the ability to distinguish, to discern between right and wrong, and we are grateful for that. That's the first, a short bracha. We're going to do another 3 of those brachas, and then we'll move on to the next one. The next one is the morning bracha of Pekeach Ivrim. Pekeach Ivrim, Hashem opens the eyes. I think this is a famous quote from Darwin, where he was the one who was trying to say, oh, it's all random, it's all just come to be. Well, he says, I freely confess how absurd this theory is in the highest possible degree when it comes to the eye. The human eye is just so wondrous that it works, and they're so complex how it works. And of course, the seeing don't see. The seeing see little. How many times have we walked down the street and not appreciated the fact that we're not blind? And thank you, Hashem, in the morning, who opens the eyes of the blind. All night I did not see. Also, on a deeper level, Pekeach Ivrim, open the eyes of the blind. The unholy side thrives on distraction. How do we end up making bad choices? Because we get distracted. We're blind to what's really going on. And we say, thank you, Hashem, for giving us the ability to see what's important in life and not get distracted by the blinding distortion and distractions of life. Pekeach Ivrim, thank you, Hashem, for opening up. Another interesting bracha, the number 3 bracha, Hashem releases the bound who've been in one position or limited positions all night, and now we're managing to stretch. Thank you, Hashem, for releasing us and letting us move. How many people wish they could move, but they don't have the strength and the ability to move? Thank you, Hashem, Matir Asurim, releasing the bound. And on a deeper level, Pero Chassidus, our godly soul is bound and tied up by the temptations of life, by our selfish side, and it's only with the help of the helping hand that we're able to break free. Thank you, Hashem, for giving me the help that I need in order to be a good person. We then move on to the next bracha, bracha number 4. Thank you, Hashem, for straightening up the bound. All night I was in horizontal position. Thankfully, I can sit up. Thankfully, I can sit up. Thank you, Hashem, Zoikev Kafufim. In another deeper explanation, emotions run wild. But as human beings, we have the ability to regulate emotions, to straighten out the bendings and the bowings of our fluctuating emotions, getting angry, getting upset, getting this, getting that. And we're able to regulate and control ourselves. Thank you, Hashem, for straightening us, for helping us straighten up. Now, you could say this is a repeat, so similar to the previous one. And the answer is yes. It's good to repeat because we want to be specific. We want to be grateful, loizu afsu, for every single detail of what's going on in life. The rest of the 14 brachas, the other 10, one by one, each one, it's got more and more deeper explanations. It's got the basic understanding we're grateful for and the deeper explanation. And as we go through, there are extra 2 paragraphs, but we're going to jump here and go over to the blessings of the Torah. I wanted to finish with this. The next step after the blessings, the 14 blessings that we're grateful to Hashem for, I encourage you to look into them and to try and say some of them. But the blessings of the Torah are wonderful because then we have no less than 3 brachas, one after the next, thanking Hashem for giving us the Torah. Because Torah is fundamental. It's foundational to us. I want to share a quick story that carries this message loud and clear. The story we heard from Rabbi Shalom Shway. Rabbi Shalom Shway was a young boy who grew up in Russia at a time where it wasn't okay to study Torah. And in that time, teaching ourselves Torah was considered very, very risky. Under the communist regime, it was considered extremely, especially to children, because the rule was elders were allowed to learn, study, but teaching children, the children were only allowed to learn Torah later on. And his mother, Bar Shalom's mother, when he was turning bar mitzvah, was ripping her hair. She was really, really worried. How is she going to be able to teach this young boy Torah? Until she found out that miles and miles away in Samarkand, there was a flourishing Torah school, underground, but flourishing. So she had, with no other choice, she decided she's going to send her son on a train alone, miles, hundreds of miles away, over to Samarkand for where she lived, and send him to yeshiva. She made arrangements. She put him on a train. She sent him. She said to him, right now, I cannot afford to come and spend time with you there. But I'm going to work very hard. And very soon, I'm going to come and see you in Samarkand. She sent him on a train, poor 13-year-old kid, off to the unknown, all those years ago, and that's where he went. And there he was studying in yeshiva. It took almost a year for her to get enough funds to get on a train. She traveled the whole way, and as she steps out of the train, who's there? Her son is waiting for her in the station. She's really happy, but she's shocked. He's like, how on earth did you know I'm coming today? I didn't know I was coming today. How did you know? So he says to her, Mother, when I went away, you told me you would very soon come to the station. Every day since I've arrived, I've come every day to wait for the train to see if you're on it. And finally today, you've arrived. What a story. An unbelievable story. Number one, it tells us that like him, as a young boy, he was sent away from home. Our soul was sent away from home. Our soul's been sent into a very physical, mundane, distracting world. But at least once a day, we need to reconnect. Let's read some of Hashem's Torah. Let's go to the station and read a little bit of Torah, a daily dose of wisdom, Hashem's wisdom. But also it tells us how important teaching and studying Torah was. She was willing to send her son away at the young age. For what value? The value of learning Torah. How powerful a story. And of course, he went on to teach that to his children and bring the message further. So, bringing Judaism home, number one, get yourself books. Get yourself Torah books. Build yourself a bookcase, a library at home of your own personal Torah books that work for you. Because when you wake up in the morning and you come downstairs or you walk into your other room and you see books, it reminds us, it puts us into a frame of mind, Torah mind, but also learn daily. It's in the Shulchan Aruch. Learn of those. There's so many areas of Torah covers, everything. There are so many entry points. You can find what works for you. And put this guy on the screen, Rabbi Josh Gordon. He literally has tens of thousands of students who go into Jewish.tv every day, and you learn 5 minutes, 10 minutes, pick a topic that works for you, pick a different teacher, and make it part of your daily routine. You cannot imagine how wonderful your day becomes when you start off with a connection point between me and my inner self. And that's how we're going to learn about Torah. We're going to learn the 3 blessings. Number 1 is the blessing. Thank you, Hashem, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanders concerning the words of Torah. First of all, it's his commandments. Learning Torah is not just an intellectual pursuit. It's learning God's wisdom. It's his commandment. And equally, it's words that are spoken words. We speak them out. And that's why you go to any Jewish library, it's very different than a regular library. Jewish library is full of noise because Torah isn't about just knowing more data, more information. Torah is about connecting. And as we verbalize it, we connect with it more. The next bracha is the bracha of Vaharevna. We ask Hashem, please Hashem, make the Torah sweet to us, make it pleasant. Help us enjoy learning Torah. And of course, if we enjoy the Torah, there's a much better chance, which this bracha goes on to ask Hashem for. Please Hashem, help it be something that our children will continue to do. Please help us that our children should follow in our ways. Of course, if we're enjoying it, we're giving that off to our children, and that's a better chance. Interestingly also, we ask Hashem to help us learn for the sake of the Torah itself, the connection that it brings, and it shouldn't be used self-aggrandizing or just be able to be self-pursuit. And then, of course, the last bracha, which is the one which many of us are most familiar with, and that is the bracha that we say when you get called up to the Torah. And that is when we thank Hashem for choosing us, for trusting us with his choice and giving us the Torah. Now, amazingly, text 11 falls straight on that. As soon as we finished thanking Hashem for giving us the Torah, what we do right away is study a part of the Torah. We right away say a part of the Torah, but not just the written Torah, both the written Torah and the oral Torah. From the books of the Chumash, which is actually from last week's Sedra, we read the blessings that the Kohanim would give. We ask Hashem to bless us, and then right away we read a Mishnah. This Mishnah is chosen to be the Mishnah that we start off our Torah study with, and it goes through a whole bunch of very important mitzvahs. The mitzvah of taking care of the poor, honoring our parents, taking care of guests, honoring the dead, bringing peace between people, between spouses. And then we end up by saying Torah is equal to all of them. And the Rambam beautifully says, what does it mean that Torah is equal to all of them? Not that Torah is in place of all the mitzvahs, but the study of Torah is there to bring all the mitzvahs. Because in Jewish teachings, study is not just an end into itself. Study is the greatest call to action. We've learned a lot today. We've learned about how home is the nerve center, and home is the area where we want to grow because we've been pushed back home. Number 2, we went through to speak about Moida Ani. We spoke about how to do it, why it's important, and how it gives us purpose and a sense of gratitude. We then went on to speak about how to get dressed modestly, self-respecting. It's in a partnership. We are honoring Hashem's image. We wash our face. We put a cover our head. We wear tzitzis as a uniform. We then went on to speak about Netilas Yadayim, washing our hands ritually, and how we do it, just like the Kohanim, and we try and wash away our worries. We then went on to speak about Ashayotza, the wonders of creation. We spoke about how our bodily functions are a gift. We have to look after our health, because our health is also a partner in creation. We then have language. We spoke about the Hebrew, the daily brachas, and we also spoke about Torah. But all of this is a call to action. We need to be doing more, not just hearing about it. So I challenge you all to think about what we've learned. I'm happy to take questions. I wish you all a very wonderful week. Thank you for spending this hour and a half with me. I hope we learned something. I'm opening up to questions, and I look forward to spending next week food for thought together with you, and then you can invite it to your friends. Thank you very much. If anyone has any questions, unmute yourself or put it in the chat. I wish you all a blessed week.
Levi, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have
Any
a
questions?
remark, maybe
Please.
not a question. It would be nice, at least for me, to have something like a checklist. What follows what? Because there are a lot of things you have to do, what are optional, what are obligatory. Maybe, I don't know, a slide or a printout. That would be really nice, that everybody can print out at home,
Okay.
for example.
So the booklet that we sent out in the email should have all the text that we put,
Mm.
not in a slide format. Please God, I will try and put together a slide of everything we learned, a summary, and we can send that out before next week. Good idea. Thank you.
Yes, and one more question about the
Please.
washing cup.
Yes.
Does it have to be the washing cup that Chabadniks use, or any cup will do? Or it has to have these two handles on the sides?
I must tell you, everything you should do it the Chabad way.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, but to answer your question, it has to be a cup that has enough space in it, so it can't be a little tiny tot. As long as it's big enough as a kiddush cup, in theory, would be big enough. Yeah, so it doesn't have to have handles. The reason why handles are beneficial is because if you poured water on your hand and then you pour the other hand, as you hold the wet handle, that could be problematic. So ideally, you want to have two handles to wash. But yes, it's true that if you didn't have handles, you would still be washing okay kosherly, especially if you're pouring a lot of water in each hand. And also, if you refill the cup in middle of washing, that's fine, as long as each hand gets a good amount of water poured over it. Did I answer the question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Sure. Look after yourself. Have a wonderful week.
Thank
Dear
you. Have a
Rabbi,
good night.
absolutely wonderful. Just wanted to mention just a point that I thought you might mention, that when we say the bracha of the Torah, it covers us to learn Torah for the 24 hours.
Correct. It does. And we should learn Torah the whole 24 hours. Absolutely. All our spare time. Absolutely right. And also, we shouldn't learn Torah before we make that bracha. Yes, well said. Thank you for pointing that out.
Wonderful. Shkoyach.
Sei gesund. Be well.
Next week. Sei gesund.
No, Steve, no questions?
I've got no questions, no. Well,
Come on. Don't be embarrassed. You know you want to.
I haven't got a question.
Observations? Everything makes sense?
Yeah.
It must be a mistake.
Good.
I'm glad to hear. Thank you. Please go next week.
I learned a few things there.
I'm glad you did. It's the way it should be. I'm sure quite a bit of it was revision, as long as some of it was new.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thanks, Jeff. Be well.
Keep well. Keep well. Keep well.
Sei gesund. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. Any other questions before we go? Going once. Going twice. Third time installed. Okay. Be well, everybody. Have a wonderful week.
Keep well.
Take care. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.